Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I just wanted to do a video. As many of you know, we have hit the 1,000 mark for subscribers, and want to start off by just saying thank you. Thank you to all of you who have watched my videos, who have enjoyed the work that I've been doing. What started as a hobby is becoming still a hobby, but a little bit more involved. I'm really enjoying the content creation process. I'm enjoying engaging with all of you in community and having conversations. And I just wanted to thank you for that. But in this video, we're going to go into kind of a hot topic, or at least if you're a Supernote user, a hot topic. And that's the desktop and mobile apps for Supernote. Those have been coming for a while. The beta for Windows and Android has been out for a couple of months, and they've been working through the issues with that. And then they rolled out the Mac OS version of the app just recently when they rolled out the stable release for both of the other versions. And unfortunately, that was plagued by some serious sync issues between the Supernote cloud, the Supernote devices, and the desktop apps. And we're going to talk about that in this video. We're going to talk about what happened, what the process was, what RADA's response was, how they tried to fix the issue, and we're going to look at some pretty cool features of what that looks like now after this most recent patch. And finally, what we're going to do is we're going to have a quick discussion on what still could be done to make these apps even better. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have some good takeaways, some thoughts, some ideas. Maybe you'll add your own in the comments below, and we can just continue the conversation. So before we get into a demo on the software itself, I do want to talk about the customer service and the response to what happened with this initial rollout. And what I think that RADA has proven again, which is the fact that they are extremely responsive to their community. And they do take the time to listen, react, and try also to be proactive when something goes awry. Shortly after they released the stable build for the Windows desktop app and the new Mac OS app, the beta was working fine. The sync issues were non-existent. But again, you have to realize that was a very small subset of users who were using those beta apps and testing those out. And as far as I know, the Mac OS version never even hit beta. It was just developed and then released as a standalone. And I think those were, as any company is trying to grow with a small development team, those were things they were trying to push out and get out there, especially coming on the heels of talking about how there was a delay with the A5X2. I think they really wanted to show that they were trying to develop and do new things and make things happen. Unfortunately, what did happen was when they rolled that out, a lot of things broke. The device wasn't synchronizing with the cloud wasn't synchronizing with the app on the desktop. It worked for just a little bit, and then it began to glitch. You had duplicate files. You had files being moved on one device, not being moved on another, and therefore you had different directories popping up. There were a lot of things going on. So not only were we, as we always are in the community for Reddit on the Supernote, engaged and letting them know what was happening, but we were also communicating through feedback from the devices. And what happened, and what I think was really important, was once we started doing that, you had RADA engaging with individuals to work through the issues and the problems on the update. Everything from sending a manual patch through a Reddit chat so that you could update it and test the feedback feature so that you could send logs. That wasn't in the original release of the app. You couldn't send your logs. So they added that feature in, and then testing with us individually as well to try and identify the source of the problems. Everything from connecting to a hotspot to uninstalling and reinstalling, all kinds of different things that were happening in the background. And it took a while. It took quite a bit of time for them to troubleshoot and identify the problems. But I am happy to say it appears everything is working as intended. I was able to easily synchronize my files at work, synchronize my files at home, make sure that the devices were working properly. One note on that, if you are using multiple Supernote devices, they do recommend, and so do I, because it makes things a lot easier, to turn the auto sync off on the devices, because that causes an inherent issue when both devices are trying to connect simultaneously. I think in the future they'll probably figure out a way to solve that, but as of right now, that was causing some of the issue. But as long as you manually sync the devices, the cloud and the desktop apps work very well together now that they've gotten those initial bugs worked out. But I wanted to clear that up, and I wanted to be very transparent with the fact that I've always been a supporter of Supernote and of Rada, but I also am very, not critical, but definitely take the time to walk through what they do well and what they may not do well, and where there are missteps, and especially in a lot of ways, how they correct those mistakes. So everyone makes mistakes. Companies do it all the time. But listening to your community, being reactive, being proactive, seeking out help, and asking us for comment is a very important feature of the company as a whole. These were genuine issues that needed to be resolved, and they had us help them do that. So it was just a phenomenal experience with the way they work. Frustrating? Yes, absolutely. Especially when you're dealing with work files and you need to have those files available. And I found other ways to kind of make that happen, whether that was backing up to OneDrive, whether it was pulling it off into Google Drive. But at the same time, once it was fixed seamlessly and very well, with very few artifacts left over from the actual bug itself. So what we'll do is we'll go through, I'll show you a couple of cool things that are in this new release and how it works. And then we will go through where I think it could still be improved some, but I think what you're going to see is going to be really interesting for you. So let's go ahead and get on with the demo.
All right, everyone. So here we are in the Supernote desktop app, and what I wanted to show you here, which I think is really important, is this is the final version of the desktop app that was released. If you go in, you will see that you are on the final version. That version is 2.0.17. Make sure that you are upgraded to that to be able to see all of the things that are happening in this video. I've shown in another video, and I'll drop that card here, that you can go into the native file explorer and view notes just with or without the desktop app open. It'll automatically use that to open those types of note files. But one thing that's really important here is I want to walk you through how you can actually use this as a tool between syncing to organize your file. Those of you who are Obsidian users may find some of this familiar, and I think that may be where the Supernote is headed with their sync functionality. For example, if I right click here, I can say open file path. And when I do that, it's going to open in Windows Explorer the file path. Now, this is where I showed you kind of how you could view the notes natively. But what's really cool now that they've got the desktop app working as intended is not only can you see those files, open those files, but you can go ahead and organize those files in Windows Explorer, and that will carry through in both the Supernote Cloud, the Supernote devices, and the mobile app. So it really is a seamless experience. Let's go ahead and open this up. And I wanted to use my social media account because I had a file that I wanted to be able to deal with. And so we'll go here. Originally, I wanted all my live files here. Well, the only place I go live is YouTube, so it didn't really make sense to have those files here anymore. So what I'm going to do is I am going to cut this. I'm going to go back to social media. I'm going to go to YouTube, live streams, and I'm going to paste that right in. Okay. And then for here, I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to say Supernote 3 years later. Now, I'll probably go back at some point and put the date on that just because it's just my naming convention and I don't have it off the top of my head. I'm going to pull those now into that folder. Now I can go back to social media. This is now a file folder that I can delete. So I will get rid of that. Then I want to show you one more thing before we sync this. Let's say I want to go back and I want to find any conflict files. And what we're going to do here is we're going to search for conflict files. And those of you who have a Supernote will know that you do get conflict files occasionally when you are working with different file types. And with the sync process, rather than delete a file or overwrite a file, if there's any confusion as to a slight difference in size or just anything that it's not 100% sure which file was last accessed, Supernote will create the conflict and then you can go in manually and fix that. So here's what that would look like. I specifically left these three. To be fair, I only had about 8, so it wasn't bad at all considering all of the updates back and forth and them having to put things back. And what I can do here is I can right click and I can go to file location. And then I can see, okay, this note is exactly the same note as this note. They're virtually the same size. The one that's not the conflict is actually a little bit larger, which to me means it should contain more data. If I wanted to be really diligent, I can always go back into the device, open these up and compare them. But I've already done that off camera, and I'm just going to show you what I do now. And I go ahead and delete that. It's now gone. I go back, I have 2 more to deal with. So I will find this one, open in file location. Again, there is the PDF conflict. You'll see that this is the MARC file. So you're looking, again, a little bit more data in the file that's retained. So I'll go ahead and delete that. And then I will go back, and this one's actually the last one on the list. You'll see that it's right here. They're exactly the same size. Instead of going back, I'll go ahead and take care of it while I'm here. Delete. Now, if I go back, there are no more conflict files. There's no more having to go through the device to do it. There's no more having to go to the Supernote cloud, and its interface is something they're still working on. This is much more seamless and much quicker. So now we've made all of those changes. And so what I want to do is I want to go ahead and sync this up to the cloud. We'll go ahead and I will sync. And we'll give that just a little bit to go ahead and do its thing. And for the record here, I'll probably speed the film up a little bit here, but also I have turned off the auto syncing for now. I turned that back on at work and it worked perfectly fine. But I haven't done that on the desktop at home yet because I still want to make sure that absolutely everything is the way it should be before I re-enable that. And I've synced several times and everything is working as expected. I'm just a little bit cautious as I usually am. Now what we can do is we can go to the Supernote Cloud. Now here in the Supernote Cloud app, you'll see that the live is gone. So it used to say live here. That's been removed. If we go into YouTube and we go to live streams, now you see that it's been created. We have the live demo we already had. We have the Supernote 3 years later. It's right here. And in case you're wondering, I hadn't gotten around to renaming this yet, but it's the the graphic or the little writing I did for that. Uh, but it's all right there. So I reorganized all of that in Windows Explorer and then when I sync it, it automatically updates through the app. So without having to interface with the apps, I managed all of that on my PC. That's really an interesting and cool way to be able to do this. And then when you add in the fact that we can then pull those files into Obsidian, which is another video that I'll go ahead and link above, then you get really this, you're not even working in the apps for a lot of your process. So from an organizational perspective, you're really streamlining the way you have to go about doing things. You don't have to upload into the app, whether it's through the web or through the desktop. The desktop is drop and drag, but if you can do all of that by opening two Windows Explorer apps and just moving things around, it's much more seamless. Those duplicate folders I told you about earlier, easily corrected because I could just double check the folder structure. If there's something missing, pull it over into the other one, delete the extra folders, all from Windows Explorer. It took me way less time than it otherwise would have. I've shown you what it looks like on the desktop. I've shown you what it looks like here on the Supernote cloud. And now I'm going to show you what it looks like on the devices and that the sync worked effectively. Now, this I may speed up on camera because, as most of you know, the Supernote does not sync quite as fast. The Nomad is faster, and I have synced these a couple times today, so it may be a little bit quicker, but I don't want to just, take this whole time because I have to sync both devices. But I want to show you in real time how those um, how those file structures change. And then that way you'll be able to see it. So I may speed up the film, but I will let you know how long that actually took for each device as well. So let's switch over to that view. And here you'll see my trusty A5X and my A6X2, both on that same screen. And if you think about what we had, live is still here. And we will pull down and we will manually sync this. We hit sync, and then you'll watch this process, and we'll put a little bit of music in here and let this play out. You'll see that that sync was successful, so we will go ahead and do that on the A5X. And again, a little bit of music to let you and maybe speed the film up a little bit. Right, now you see that both of the screens have synced, both the devices have synced successfully. The live folder is gone on both of them. And when you go into YouTube, you will see live streams and you'll see those file folders. I do want to point out that one thing I did not take into consideration was I had not synced the devices since I've been home. So there were a lot of changes for it to check against since we made changes in the system on the desktop at the house. And I think that slowed down the process. Also, you're likely not going to be dealing with both devices. Now, you may. I do use both of these on a consistent basis, but I think that if you have one device and you have it set to auto sync and you also have your desktop set to auto sync, that can streamline this process quite a bit because it's constantly in the background. But I think that that's really important. All right, the last thing that I want to show is kind of what I see as areas of improvement when it comes to the Supernote app and the experience. One thing that I think that Supernote really needs to get right or to change is the interface with the cloud versus the mobile and desktop apps. And I think that's just part of their growth. And I know they're a small development team. I've talked to them about this. I think that they're working on it. They have been really focused on developing this desktop experience as well as the mobile experience. Unfortunately, I think the issue is that the cloud interface is still very clunky and very much, you have to select a box and then go through each individual thing, renaming, copying, moving. It always defaults to the root directory if you're trying to move something. Whereas here, you get a mirrored experience for the desktop app, the mobile app, and the device. So if I'm here and I want to move this folder, I can drop it and drag it into another folder. I can right click on it and delete it or rename it. I can add a new folder very fast. I can search very quickly. I can change the look and feel. You can do that over here as well, but again, it's not as seamless. I just double click into the files, and then, like for example, if I wanted to move this, it has presence. So it knows it doesn't jump me back to the root file directory. So let's cancel this and I'll show you what I mean. Let's say I wanted to move this folder. If I hit move to, it's going to take me back to the root directory and I'm going to have to go through and find everything and move it there. So there's no drop and drag feature. There's no knowing that I'm in this folder and I may want to just move it into testing environment, or I may want to move it one level up. No, I have to go through all that scaffolding to be able to make that work. And I think that once Supernote gets this interface replicated on the web interface for the cloud app, along with what you currently have, which is this integration with the local file storage, you could really have something powerful. Alternatively, there could be a scenario like what you have with Obsidian, and I think that may be where they might be heading, to where the cloud interface itself goes away. I don't know that that's going to happen. I think they're going more the Google Drive model and the OneDrive model, where you have some type of cloud interface, and then you have the apps and the local storage where you can download that to your local device. But they could, if they wanted to, go the Obsidian Sync route to where everything is end to end encrypted from device to device to device. And that would be an interesting model for one of these devices to use, because then you're not dependent on a web app. I mean, you still have that sync happening in the background, but what you don't have is problems with the interface looking different and you're not supporting so many multiple things. I think that's one real growth area that they need to consider, is how they deal with this interface, because it is clunky, it is hard to manage. It's much easier to manage through the desktop or through, quite frankly, Windows Explorer. To me, that is genius. Being able to manage my files this way and then just sync and then have them available for viewing with the desktop app, that is just awesome. Being able to do that and just pull this up and have it available is tremendous. And I think that's one of those things. And then to have the links be able to work as well is really cool, because within this app, you can then click and it's going to find that link to something else. It's really, really neat. And I think that's where they are headed long term. That functionality is probably never going to exist here in on the right hand side. If you could at least minimize the friction of doing simple tasks like renaming files or moving files or drop and drag uploads, things of that nature, I think it would at least make them somewhat comparable. And then when you need to switch from one to the other, and that would make more sense. Anyway, that is it for our demo. we will jump back over and wrap up our conversation.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for hanging in there with me. Hopefully, this was enjoyable. Hopefully, you learned a lot. Again, I think that Rada has done a phenomenal job, and the Supernote team has done a great service to the community, like they always have, by addressing these issues head on, understanding that it's a frustration point, really working with us as users to try and understand our needs and to fix the problems that came out of this. Now, that's not to say that there aren't real issues moving forward and things that they need to do to make sure this doesn't happen again. But I think as each time they run into a roadblock, they learn from that experience. And that to me is why you stay with a brand, not because they're perfect, not because they do everything the right way the first time, but because they try to constantly improve and continuously improve. And also, when they do make those mistakes, they own them and they really work with you to try to understand not only why it happened and how it happened, but how they can avoid it in the future. So for me, that is why this process has been valuable. Again, I understand frustrations. I had them myself. And I know that I was sending logs from 4 different devices, my A6X2, my A5X, actually 5 different devices, both of my computers, my work PC and my home PC, and my Android phone. So I was sending logs and communications and screenshots from all of that. A, because I wanted the problem solved for me, but also because I wanted to support the company because I believed they were really trying to do what was best for the user. As always, thank you so much for being with me. Thanks for sticking to the end. Uh, Thank you again for getting us to over 1,000 subscribers. That's awesome. It's a wonderful thing, and it's kind of just, it's humbling. If you haven't subscribed yet, if you haven't liked the videos yet, if you haven't selected that notification bell, please do all of those things. It helps the channel tremendously, and it'll just keep growing from here, hopefully more and more. Finally, please drop your comments down below. I'd love to hear from you, your experience. What were the frustration points that you ran into? What were the things on my wish list that may or may not be on yours? And what were things that you would have that should be added to that list? And hopefully we can continue the conversation. I will talk to you soon.